Did you know Ben Franklin had 2 birthdays? Ben Franklin was just as extremely famous in his day as he is in ours.
You know, Michael, I fathered an illegitimate son.
Really?
But I kept all this from my wife, Deborah. These things only serve to upset the women. They are the gentler sex.
Wow. Ben Franklin, you're really kind of a sleazebag.
Invented electricity all by myself. But when it comes to inventing ways to freaking dominate the board, well...
Big Ben Franklin and this shan't be pretty. Let me instruct you how we battle in the city of Philly. You couldn't sell Rick James a bag of crack. You're out of practice. My victory's more certain than death or taxes.
Who is the King of England? Why, the tyrant King George, of course.
I don't care what Jim says. That is not the real Ben Franklin. I am 99% sure.
The man with the kite was born in Boston on January 6, 1706. 46 years later, Great Britain decided to switch from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar. In doing so, all the colonies and everyone else under King George's thumb jumped ahead 11 days. That made Franklin's birthday January 17th, giving him 2 birthdays. Ben Franklin was considered the most brilliant mind of his age, but he really only had about 2 years of formal schooling. He taught himself by spending whatever little money he had on books, sometimes not even eating, just so he could afford a new book. He read essays and articles and then rewrote them from memory, and later went on to help found the University of Pennsylvania. He also received honorary degrees from Harvard, Yale, Oxford. Not bad for only 2 years of schooling. Do you know who Silence Dogood is? Well, she was a widow in Boston in the 1720s who offered her own experience on things such as fashion, marriage, women's rights, and religion. The widow Dogood was hugely popular and soon started receiving marriage proposals from all the bachelors in Boston. Also, she never existed. Ben Franklin wrote all the letters, and he wrote 14 of them before finally revealing himself as the author. He was a sensation. He rolled with his new popularity and moved to Philadelphia, where he stayed for the rest of his life. In Philadelphia, Franklin amassed so much wealth as an owner, land speculator, and publisher that he was able to basically retire at 42 and be a man of leisure for the rest of his life. It's in this time that he came up with most of his inventions, like bifocals and the lightning rod. Franklin was actually a reluctant revolutionary, being among the last of the founding fathers to come out in favor of full separation from England. When the Boston Tea Party happened, he actually called it an act of violent injustice on our part. His support of King George earned him suspicions of being a British spy until he publicly announced his support for independence. Despite becoming known as a founding father, Big Ben had a son named William who was an outspoken British loyalist. He even spent time in a colonial prison for his opposition to revolution. After the war, he moved back to England. Good riddance. Who needs you? Franklin only ever owned 2 slaves, and they both worked inside the house, but in his old age he became a staunch abolitionist. In 1790 he introduced a petition to Congress to free slaves. It was largely ignored, but he never gave up the fight, and unfortunately just a few short months later he died. In his will he included a provision that required his daughter and son-in-law to free their slave in order to get their inheritance. Ever the scientist, BF once proposed a study of how various foods affect the smell of our flatulence, with the ultimate goal of making our farts smell better. He called it a letter to a Royal Academy about farting, but he ended up never actually releasing this essay and only showed it to a few friends for laughs. Hey, did you hear about Ben Franklin's essay? Yeah. He said farts a lot. Yes. Farts. That's a wrap on this Founding Father. Tune in next week for John Adams. Until then, fart proudly. Thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe and click that bell for notifications.